So we just had E3, and a bunch of different games have been revealed. I couldn't keep track of all of them, and even went back and watched some of the trailers a bunch of times again. One of those was Ghost of Tsushima, and now we're going to analyze the gameplay demo that we were given and find out everything that we can possibly find out from the gameplay. Ghost of Tsushima is a game set in Japan during the Kamakura period, or 1274, and Mongolian forces have invaded. As a surviving samurai, you'll have to adapt or die, or at least that's the sort of sentiment that the devs have been giving us so far. Specifically, your character is going to be a cross between a ninja and a samurai. Now, to give you some background as to what was going on historically, the Khan of the time, leading up to 1274, had been engaged in different conflicts against southern China and Korea, and in 1266 had only sent a letter to the Emperor of Japan at the time, inviting the Japanese to ultimately establish friendly relations through the sending of some of their military power to Mongol territory. The powers over at mainland Japan during this Kamakura period decided to ignore the Khan's offer. Now, why am I saying all this? Well, this all leads up to the real-world history that the game's based off of, and at the beginning of the gameplay reveal, we get this bleak shot of a smoky-looking forest leading up to a grassy plain. And when you look over that grassy plain, it's also quite dark. There are places that are on fire or burning, or places that could potentially be smoky or destroyed or really savagely affected by all of this fighting and conflict. Not only does it look fantastic, but it fits perfectly. See, the Khan wasn't a fan of being turned down, and in 1274 sent a vast fleet carrying around 4,000 men with a combination of Chinese, Mongolian, Korean, and other types of warriors to invade the archipelagos of Japan. Most relevant to us, Tsushima. The islanders were not so lucky, and hundreds of people were slaughtered by Mongol armies, as there simply weren't enough Japanese samurai or Japanese warriors available to defend against such a large force. Now, I'm going to go into more of the story behind all of this game in another video, but for now, that's pretty much enough backstory. Now, as you can imagine, and from a lot of the trailers that we see and everything we've been shown so far, it's very fitting. It's a lot of dark, sort of desolate imagery we see. Pretty depressing stuff. Because as I just said, things don't go too well for the islanders. The leader of these forces was actually the grandson of Genghis Khan, and we all know how successful his campaigns were. Suffice it to say, the odds aren't really stacked in our favor here. But the devs say that this is an open world game, and to the point that if we see something off into the distance, we'll be able to actually go over there and explore the story for ourselves. With a setting like this, where it's literally an invasion, conflicts are happening all over this island, and we can literally go out and experience it ourselves in our own path, because they suggest a little that we can actually carve the story our own way. Of course, it will probably follow set events and all of that. It's pretty difficult to have that sort of storytelling where it's 100% in the player's control, but even still, it'll be pretty exciting to see what kind of lore tidbits they'll throw in there and sort of experiencing this invasion firsthand. We also got shown a bit of the combat of the game as well, and at first I was thinking it was a little hack and slash, but when you look at it, the person playing is playing quite defensively. He's reacting to a lot of what the AI was doing. The devs themselves mentioned that you're a couple of mistakes away from being dead. So it sounds kind of Dark Souls-esque, which, to be honest, nowadays, what isn't Dark Souls-esque? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I really like the Dark Souls series, but it gives us a bit of an idea of what the combat will be like, though they've not gone into too much details about the specifics. Like, they mentioned that they got some, of course, professionals to help them with the motion capture of, Jin's sort of movements. The main character is called Jin. Sort of the animations of his attacks and the different styles, and they mentioned different styles, and I'm not sure if that meant different styles as in the blocking animation is one style, the attacking animation is another style, but it's essentially one moveset like in Dark Souls. When you raise your shield and block in Dark Souls, it's not, some special style, you're just raising a shield, right? So I'm not sure if that means that we can learn different styles to block, and we can change those, and then we'd have different types of blocks and different types of attacks and combos and all of that, or if it's literally just meaning a different style as in a different animation. But either way, it did look pretty cool. Now, obviously they had sort of indicators and things like that disabled for the demo just to make it look you know, extra spicy and enticing and all of that. But it looks like the game could be really possible to play entirely without UI, which is pretty, I mean, I usually like to play games like this with the UI because it's very easy to get lost, and of course, you know, usually with the narrative being fairly important to the experience, you know, you're following the story. Like say in The Witcher 3, you don't necessarily have to follow the story immediately, but eventually you do come back to it. And it's not a bad story by any means, you want to do the story of The Witcher, right? But you have the freedom to not be forced into just doing solely the story. We don't really know too much about the game in terms of, well, we don't know a release date. We don't know whether there's going to be a loot system, whether that even exists, you know, things like that, because, you know, there are different appearances for this Jin. But for instance, can you mix and match armors? Or is it one set outfit that he's putting on? I would think in this day and age it would probably be that you mixing up different pieces of armor sets rather than just wearing outfits, but again, we'll see. Also, we get to see Jin approaching combat a little differently. He climbs up on one of the buildings and he uses a little sort of grappling hook thing to swim across to another side of a building. So it seems we'll be able to explore even more in depth, because in Assassin's Creed, you know, if you wanted to, say, climb a pyramid, you could. You can pretty much climb anything you want to. I mean, of course, you could find yourself on the top of mountains in The Witcher, but, you know, you couldn't necessarily find yourself on top of every single building ever in The Witcher. I'm sure with mods, you know, mods make anything possible. You could do that, but as far as if you're just playing the base game, you couldn't access literally every single part of the game, and of course that wasn't necessary. You didn't need that to enjoy the experience, but you know, in Assassin's Creed you could, so there's that extra dimension there. This whole climbing mechanic might also help us with a bit of espionage and things of that nature. Remember, the character has to adapt because of the fact that the samurai are pretty much beaten at this point on this island. Mongol forces are superior in terms of numbers, and Jin has to find new ways to fight, spying on his enemies, gathering new intel to help him learn how he can survive and perhaps even win this conflict is probably going to be an element of this game. One of the devs also mentioned that part of the story, they wanted to make it an immersive experience in the way that instead of a character telling you about a horror going on, you are actually going to be able to experience it yourself. And if you can go ahead and spy on enemies or potential people that you don't trust, doing things of that nature within the story, I think that comes under what that dev was talking about. But going back to the invasion of this island and the fact that this character Jin will have to sort of learn and adapt to survive is some of the things that the devs were saying. While considering the fact that there are all these different types of warriors that were invading the island or just participating in this event, Jin will perhaps probably not just be able to, because he's a samurai that also seems to be transitioning into some sort of ninja, but perhaps he'll also be able to learn fighting styles of, you know, Mongolian warriors, Chinese warriors as well. And so it seems like it's going to be fairly expansive. So out of all the games that we've been shown this year for E3, I think this one is the one that I'm the most excited for, the most hyped for. I know that it's probably not coming out this year, we haven't been given a release date or anything like that, but even still, it can't be too far off if they're showing off gameplay, right? So yeah. But that's pretty much all I have to say about the gameplay reveal for Ghost of Tsushima. We should keep in mind that the devs have said that this isn't going to be 100% historically accurate. So the backstory that I'll tell you in either tomorrow, day after that video, or anything that we've discussed here that was based on, that was talking about the history behind the game, they might not necessarily use too much of that. Or there are things that they may change, adapt from that. But even still, I suppose we'll just have to wait and see what we actually get. After all, in some of the gameplay that we've seen of the combat, Jin's able to pierce some of the Mongolians' armor with his sword alone. And one of the Mongolians even has their armor pierced by an arrow that's able to drop them. So I'm not sure how historically accurate that would be. I'm guessing not very, but I don't know Mongolian armor too well, so who knows? And of course, considering the direction of the story as well, because, you know, what actually happened was that Tsushima was pretty much defeated, other smaller islands were also pretty much defeated, and then the Mongolian forces went over to Japan and then had some conflict there. And as I said, again, I'll elaborate on what exactly happened in a video. What do you think? Are you excited for this game? Do you think there's a bunch of things I should have mentioned but I've simply missed? Go ahead and tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course, subscribe. And until the next video, have a very good day. I've been Pride, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.